Greatest disadvantage of cassia is that it's filled with coumarin. Coumarin is a blood thinner, and for certain people with health conditions, that blood thinner can be very serious. And yes, most of the flavor is taken away, and what you have left is that ground black stuff, the fibrous tissue that's left after extracting the flavor. Guess what? Those coffee grounds, so to speak, are what they can use in things like vanilla bean ice cream. It really has very, very little flavor, and to me, it simply adds grit. Yes, it has a certain visual context, but for the most part, they're just fooling you into thinking that this has a greater value. And there we have it. Hi, I'm back just before Thanksgiving and Christmas, and I'd like to talk about two of the most important flavors that we use during the holiday season. One is cinnamon and the other is vanilla. Don't get fooled, they're not all the same. I'd like to talk about that for just a moment. When it comes to cinnamon, there's about 300 varieties of the cinnamomum plant. However, only about 17 are those genuinely used for flavoring and for cuisine. Most of those are what's called cassia variety, whereas there's only one cinnamon that is not cassium variety, and that is Cinnamomum varieties, or true cinnamon. The cassia bark is thicker, darker, and more fibrous. So when it's ground to be used for culinary purposes, it can actually have a little bit of a grit feel on the palate. Not only is that, but cassia has some other deep deficiencies. It has a stronger flavor, but that flavor component continues to build and continues to build on the palate the more that you eat it. In fact, cassia cinnamon is the stuff they put in candies when they're hot. The greatest disadvantage of cassia is that it's filled with coumarin. Coumarin is a blood thinner, and for certain people with health conditions, that blood thinner can be very serious. And yes, there's enough in cassia to make a true health difference. The greatest advantage of Cinnamomum varieties, or true cinnamon, is that when they peel the bark, it's much thinner, it's lighter in color, it has a sweeter taste, it actually has kind of a clove flavor, a clove note to it on a finish. When they grind it, because it's less fibrous, it doesn't have that same gritty feel on the tongue, and because it's a milder, more sweet cinnamon, it doesn't continue to build on the palate. So when we actually eat the product with the cinnamon in it, we get the true flavor that doesn't resonate longer than we expect that. The other advantage on this is that there's very, very little coumarin in it. In fact, in true cinnamon, there's actually a small amount of antioxidant. At Spice Road, we use only true cinnamon. It's much more expensive, about 10 times more expensive, but we feel it's worth it because of its flavor, because of its tooth in the palate, but also, and most importantly, because of the health benefits and the risks of using cassia cinnamon. Vanilla is such an important flavor to the culinary world. You'll find it in almost every baked good, and around the world in many cultures it's used for hot dishes as well. Vanilla is a pod that's grown on an orchid plant actually, and is extraordinarily expensive in many concerns. It's not the most expensive flavor compared to some others like saffron, but in the world of spices and flavors that we use, especially in the American kitchen, it's quite expensive. One vanilla bean costs about $10 to $12. We see on many of the cooking shows, you'll see them using vanilla bean. It has a wonderful flavor, but it's not always convenient, and it's certainly expensive to have a couple of those beans just sitting in your cupboard. One of the first processes of vanilla is just simply ground. They take it, the vanilla pod, they mill it, and this has a great flavor, and it is convenient, but it's still quite expensive. 1 ounce here costs me $14, and that's about 1 pod. We don't use that here at Spice Road for several reasons, and I'll continue to explain why in just a moment. Now, the next process is making pure vanilla extract. They soak the beans, typically in alcohol, and then squeeze those and extract the flavors from the beans and make this elixir blend, if you will. It has about 10 to 12% alcohol, depending on which process they use again. And 10% alcohol is 20 proof. That's more than some wines that we drink. Now, obviously, we're not going to drink half a bottle of vanilla, but this is the process that they take, and it's a fairly effective process, sucking out that flavor and then suspending that in water and alcohol. But yes, there is a lot of liquid, but with a great deal of flavor. Now, one of the other products that you'll see that's not nearly expensive is artificial vanilla. Does it taste as good as pure vanilla or vanilla extract? Absolutely not. But there's a couple of advantages with imitation vanilla, especially if you are on a budget. This is much cheaper. This bottle was about 99 cents at the local grocers. I got this at the same grocery store, and it was almost $9. So there is a difference in cost, certainly. The flavor in imitation vanilla is not as strong, but with that price difference, depending upon the product you're making, you can certainly use more to enhance the flavor. One of the upside benefits of artificial, though, is especially when we're making cold products like ice cream. The next process is white vanilla. Now, white vanilla is, they take the vanilla bean, crush that much like the powder, then the flavor is extracted, but much of the color is taken out during that process. But primarily the difference is it's a more pure flavor to begin with, but then it's suspended in a certain amount of sugar. Because this is dry, it has a couple of advantages there. It can be put in cookies and cakes and things without the extra liquid, and also you're not going to get the color taint that you would, and when you're making chiffons and white cakes and some cookies, the moisture and the color can be an issue. And because of the color and because of the lack of moisture, that's what we use here at Spice Road. Now, one of the things that you might be interested in, I know it's certainly interesting to me, is that when they grind vanilla to make vanilla powder, again, this is essentially just ground bean, and there's nothing extracted and taken from that. However, when they take the ground vanilla bean and make the elixir, the actual extract with the alcohol, most of the flavor is taken away, and what you have left is that ground black stuff, the fibrous tissue that's left after extracting the flavor. Guess what? Those coffee grounds, so to speak, are what they can use in things like vanilla bean ice cream. It really has very, very little flavor, and to me, it simply adds grit. Yes, it has a certain visual context, but for the most part, they're just fooling you into thinking that this has a greater value. And there we have it, folks. Vanilla and cinnamon. White vanilla, true cinnamon is what we use here at Spice Road. Happy holidays.